those still critically ill in hospital, there is emerging evidence that people from ethnic minorities seem to be more susceptible to contracting COVID-19. Figures suggest that a third of patients who are critically ill in hospital are of non-white ethnicity. And the Department of Health confirmed today it will be working with Public Health England to look at why that might be the case. Well, joining me now to discuss this further is Dr. Bayada. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. First of all, this is a trend that we're seeing not just here in the capital in the UK, but abroad as well. What are the theories as to why?
So, good evening. There's a number of socio-economic theories which hold true across the world. So we've seen the same sort of picture in the United States, where there's a lot of good data coming out. But Black and Asian people and ethnic minorities often live in overcrowded housing in less affluent areas, and it's very difficult to socially isolate properly because there's different members of different generations of the family living all together. So the young might be mixing with the older and more vulnerable and passing the virus, even if they're asymptomatic. A lot of NHS staff, nearly 20%, are of ethnic minorities of Black or Asian descent, compared to 13% of the country as a whole. And there's a greater predisposition to various conditions such as diabetes and cardiovascular illness in Asian populations. So this all contributes. But actually, when you look at the number of NHS doctors, surgeons, nurses, etc., who are dying, it struck me how often these were Black and Asian colleagues, and that's what made me think there must be something else to it.
I mean, of course, you mentioned the number of NHS workers from BAME backgrounds. We've talked a lot on this programme about bus drivers as well. It's the same thing there. I mean, for people watching, what is the advice then that you can give so they can better protect themselves?
Well, the same advice as we're giving to everyone to socially isolate and wash your hands, of course, but there seems to be a part to play for vitamin D deficiency in Black and Asian communities. So there's extra pigment in the skin to protect the skin from harmful UV rays. And of course, that's very necessary if you come from a very hot and sunny country, which we don't tend to, despite the weather at the moment. And that means that there's less ability for the skin to make vitamin D. And that seems to lend to higher levels of respiratory complications, basically, regardless of ethnicity, but especially within these groups. And that seems to really have some bearing on the current trends, where there's almost 3 times the amount of patients on ITU as you would expect from the population distribution from BA/ME backgrounds.
And finally, sorry to interrupt you. Is there one more question? The BMA said that they are looking into this now, but a bit slow on the uptake on this one, you think?
Yes, perhaps a little bit slow, especially when you realise that so many Black and Asian colleagues have answered the call to arms to come back. And not only do they have this potential risk factor, they're also older, which puts them in another level of being at risk as well. So we need to be very careful where we allocate these colleagues who have done a wonderful thing in coming back to support the NHS, but hopefully not at the risk of being at risk themselves. So I would suggest that every Black and Asian person who's potentially at risk does take a vitamin D supplement daily.
Okay, Dr. Jaswinder Kaur, thank you very much for talking to me this evening. Thank you.
A pleasure. Thank you.